Well, good morning, Al. Welcome back to the continent.
Well, I'm glad to be back, sort of. We had a wonderful cruise in the Baltic Sea, went to a number of countries. And the highlight to me was over the July 4th weekend. I visited the Solidarity Museum at the Gdansk shipyard, where, of course, the movement that started or led to the fall of the Berlin Wall occurred. And the thing that was really striking to me, we take all sorts of freedoms for granted in the United States. But we had a guide who had, as a young girl, walked to school past that shipyard, recounted what it was like under the communist rule, and just talking about, one, it was clear how much the free press was important in allowing that movement to stay alive. But her talking with such reverence and emotion about freedom as we were celebrating our 250th anniversary. It was quite a great experience. Then I come home, and I guess what I'd say is this last weekend we got home Sunday night, and just in the last couple of days, sort of saw how fragile those freedoms are. I mean, came home to the second ice shooting in a week of people who were not their targets. I mean, basically murder in the streets. I won't make comparisons to other secret police forces. There's a story yesterday that this election task force that Trump has created is going to start releasing classified documents. I guess he's going to try to take, I'm sure selected evidence that has been discounted by the courts about the 2020 election, but all in an effort to undermine the credibility of elections. And then, just for good measure, the U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of New York, who wants to be the Director of National Intelligence, subpoenaed 5 New York Times reporters because they had the audacity to tell the truth that the Air Force One that Qatar tried to bribe Trump with wasn't secure enough to fly him back from NATO in Turkey. And now the war in Iran is going again. Greeted by Marco Rubio's statement that it was illegal and against international law for countries to charge fees for passage of international waterways. And what does Trump do last night? He says we're going to take control of the strait, which he probably won't be able to do anyway, and then we're going to charge fees because we can make a lot of money on it.
You make
And
20%.
20%. And then finally, a judge ruled yesterday that Trump's suit of the IRS because for the leak of his taxes was a complete conflict of interest. Even recommended one of his lawyers for discipline and had some unkind words for Todd Blanche, his attorney general, who is coming up for confirmation. I guess I sort of looked back and I said, maybe Tony Soprano's running our country.
Well, well, I'm sorry.
Explain that, Craig.
While you're away, we didn't get much taken care of. Whole got dug a little deeper. I tell you, it is astounding. And your comment about Trump wanting to release information, intelligence information, is tied to another phenomenon, which is somehow President Trump's decided we just don't hear from him enough.
Right.
And he wants to start doing more live broadcasts on national television. And there is going to be one on Thursday. He's going to be joined by the director of the FBI, a real solid figure, and I think that the head of, maybe the acting head of the National Intelligence, and to talk about this, to talk about what they have uncovered about, for heaven's sakes, the 2020 election 6 years ago on issues that have long been, addressed and found wanting in terms of their legitimacy. So it goes on and on. You did mention Todd Blanche and his confirmation hearings on the Hill, which takes me to a place that I wanted to at least to recognize and make comment about Senator Lindsey Graham's passing. I've known Senator Graham for a long time. I knew him when he was very close to John McCain and upheld many of the principles that John McCain stood for. They were kind of constant companions on Capitol Hill, as well as traveling around the world to different locations, and had a chance to, have dinner occasionally with the late Lindsey Graham, and thought well of him. And I think, like so many people say today, that was a Lindsey Graham they knew and respected and enjoyed. He evolved. That happens in Washington. I will say that I think he thought he was always doing what he believed best for the country, even though if some of us may have disagreed with that. But on his passing, certainly send condolences to his sister, who apparently will now serve his unexpired term, members of his family and his close friends. It was, I will say, a shock around the whole area when this was announced the other day. Oh, but Todd Blanche, probably for Todd Blanche, he has a more difficult time.
Yeah.
Lindsey Graham not chairing that hearing, and I think the hill just got a little steeper for Mr. Blanche.
Lindsey Graham was a complicated figure, and but he was very, really interesting. He was one of the prosecutors when he was in the House in the impeachment of Bill Clinton. But Clinton, over the years, at least when I talked to him about it a little bit, he said, and this was a few years ago, it was before he became a Trumper, but really had very nice words to say about Lindsey Graham. That he thought he was a pretty decent guy. He's over the years had said, very nice things about Joe Biden. And he was one of the three amigos with Joe Lieberman and John McCain, who played a very important role in keeping America's foreign policy strong. For some of us, it was a little hard for it to take when from, being sort of a devotee to John McCain, who at least I, as a Democrat, thought was an American hero, who I always, McCain used to take the Navy train up to the Army Navy game. And during the years that we were in power, I'd drive that train, and every year we'd sit down for an hour and have these long talks. I thought he was a wonderfully principled guy. And then to have Lindsey sort of, after saying in the campaign how terrible Trump would be for the country, just sort of suck up to him. But, Lindsey's theory was that you got to be relevant. And he thought by being close to Trump, he might be able to influence him in some good ways, I suspect. It makes you a little suspect of his values. But I think overall, the country will miss him.
Yeah, I think so. Well, then, of course, you have President Trump, who's decided to ask the Senate to pass a crypto bill in Lindsey Graham's name, even though Lindsey Graham wasn't a particular champion of it. It's just it goes on and on.
I mean, it is.
Well, what
really
else? Let's see.
unbelievable.
Inflation could have been a good story today, doing a little better. But then, of
Yeah.
course, with the Strait of Hormuz being
Right.
shut down again, oil prices are going up. So the president kind of stepped on that story.
Well, I guess the inflation rate went down, but really because oil prices went down.
Yeah. I mean, so they'll be back up again. I don't know. It's a little discouraging, but hopefully get a little time off this summer and relax. And we'll keep doing this.
Right.
I know we're going to be together on Thursday, so we'll
Right.
talk more then.
More to come.
More to come. Well, welcome back. Good to see you. See you Thursday.
Great. See ya. Take care.